Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another live stream coaching session. I am doing these live stream coaching sessions as my gift to my community. These calls are absolutely complimentary, no strings attached, no expectation, no obligation that anybody that I coach during one of these live stream coaching sessions will ever become a paid client. If you have been tuning into these live stream coaching sessions and you'd wondered, man, what would it be like if I could have an opportunity to be coached by Cliff 90 minutes one-on-one, absolutely devoted to helping me break through to new levels of success in any area of life? All you need to do is email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, put live stream coaching in the subject line, and then that's exactly what Marc Rains recently did. And so, Marc, welcome to the live stream. How are you today?
Thanks, Cliff. Really excited to be here. This is great.
I'm super excited to have you here. Tell me, what is on your mind today? What are you looking to create in this world? And what's keeping you from having it?
Well, I'm approaching kind of a milestone birthday, and looking at where my life goes from here. And I'm in a spot where I have considered starting my own business, wanting to move away from the corporate America world. Um, and I'm also in a spot where I don't really know what what that would be. Um, and it just seems, I feel like I'm a relatively creative person, but when it comes to this, I just have no idea what the next steps are to figure out what the thing is I want to do with the next part of my life.
Excellent. So, I got a questionnaire that I ask everyone to fill out before going into this. So I have a great deal of information that you've supplied me with, and I may bring some of that into this dialogue that we're having here today to see which paths we might go down. Before I do, I just want to make sure that I get permission right at the beginning. Before we hit live and all this other stuff, you already acknowledge that we're broadcasting live. One thing I haven't asked you yet, and I just want to be very specific. May I have your permission to be your coach during this live coaching session? And before you say yes, I'm going to ask very specifically, can I ask you questions or say things that might challenge you at a deep level?
Yes and yes.
Excellent. Wonderful. So there are a couple of things. One of the things that I ask in my questionnaire is, what if the next 3 years of your life were the best 3 years of your life, and you were to look back and say, man, accepting that live stream complimentary coaching session with Cliff was one of the best decisions I could have ever made? What would have to happen for you to say that? And here's what you wrote. I would have at least one stream of income, if not multiple, to replace trading dollars for hours in a traditional job. So that's number one.
Mhm.
Number two, I'd like to have the freedom to not work Fridays or Mondays or whatever day I want to take off if I feel led to, so that I can spend time with and be fully present with my wife. That's number two. And then number three is, I would feel that what I was doing was solving a problem for people, adding value, and making people's lives better. So that's number three. So those are three very clear pictures of a future destination. What is it in your mind that seems to be keeping you from saying, okay, this is what I want, and going out and creating that opportunity?
The questionnaire that you filled out really caused me to do some deep soul searching, and some praying for guidance on this. And I think it's something that has kind of plagued me for a large portion of my adult life is that I have the knowledge and some of the answers for what to do, but it's executing fully. And I think one of the things that I run into is, well, take a step back. In the past year and a half, we my wife and I have entered into entrepreneurship. We had the opportunity to purchase a business from one of her lifelong friends and who was physically unable to run the business any longer. And so my wife was able to quit her job, and she runs that business full time. And while financially it hasn't made a huge shift in our lives, it's made such an improvement in her life and her happiness and the ability for her to have something that's hers and own it and drive it forward. And I want that same thing. But I think one of the pieces of pressure that I put on myself is whenever I look at something, I immediately go to, can this replace my income and pay for healthcare and supplement the 401k matching that I'm going to lose and all this? So everything has to be here, or I'm just like, maybe that's not the thing. Maybe I need to look for something else.
I get that. And I certainly, when I was pondering leaving my career as an insurance agent and having a wife that was a stay-at-home mom of 3 young children, me being the only income earner for our family, I certainly, it'd be nice to just go and quit my day job, go do this thing that I love. And even if I'm only making just a little bit of money, just scraping by or whatever, and all this other stuff, just it just wouldn't be the same. For me, there's no way I was going to do that if all of a sudden this meant that we're going to go into massive debt. We're not gonna have any kind of ability to do anything like vacations or anything of that nature. We're not gonna be able to send our kids to college. We're just gonna be poverty, on a financial level in the depths of poverty. But boy, will I be glad to be free from the reins of somebody else telling me what to do. So I resonate with the idea that if I'm going to go do something, I personally feel responsible for financially providing for not just the needs of this family, but for some of the wants of this family, and also provide our saving and doing something for the future as well, planning for the future. So I get that. The question I have, sometimes it's just this overwhelming feeling. It's like, man, if I go and do something, is this going to replace this? Do you have a dollar figure in your mind about how much money a business must generate? Let's just say it's a solopreneur venture, not that it has to be. But if it was just you, your overhead was very little, and you figure you got to pay taxes as a self-employed business person, do you know how much money your business must generate on a monthly basis for you to be able to do all those things that you just said?
Yeah, I have a rough idea, probably somewhere in the range of 15,000 a
Okay.
month, something around there.
So this is great. So one of the things to consider, since you have this rough range in your mind of 15K per month, the question anytime you're considering pursuing something, does this, whatever this option is that I'm considering, have the ability for me to produce $15,000 a month and give me a lifestyle where, because by the way, that checks item number one, a stream of
Mhm.
income to replace my dollars for hours in a traditional job. So check that. So that one's done. Next, if I were to pursue this and I were generating $15,000 a month in my business pursuits, would this business option, at least somewhere within the very foreseeable future, and we're talking maybe within 18, 24 months, maybe 3 years at the max, could I build this where I'm consistently bringing in $15,000 a month and still have the ability to take Fridays and Mondays and an occasional other day here and there to go and do things with my wife and be fully present with her whenever I want? So that's the second stipulation for any idea that you might consider, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The third one is this thing that I'm doing that would allow me to generate $15,000 a month, would allow me eventually to have some days off here and there, some Fridays off, 4-day weekends, things of that nature. Is it also something that I'm doing that is solving a real problem for people? Is it adding value to people's lives? And am I making people's lives better? So those are the three qualifications. And those seem like they provide a lot of clarity. You say there's one thing that you said here today, and it also came out in the questionnaire in a slightly different form. It is, I know what to do, but I just can't seem to get myself to do it. So I want to know what that means. When you say, I know what to do, what is it that you know what to do?
It's funny because I find certain things are so easy to do that are hard for other people to do, but then it seems like the the things that would be easy, for whatever reason, I just put roadblocks in place. So, for example, I'm a avid CrossFitter. I go to CrossFit 4 days a week, um, and 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 I go to the 6 a.m. class, and so that means I have to be up, 5:15 in the morning, and I am not a morning person, but I have somehow made that important where I'm going to get up at 5:15, 4 or 5 days a week, and go and do that workout. But then it's things like I know that I need to tighten up my diet a little bit, and the best way for me to do that is weigh and measure everything I eat for about a month so I can get a new baseline of where my food is. And it is so hard to consistently do that for a solid month, even though I have a clear vision in my head of why and what the objective is. For whatever reason, I can put blockers in front of myself. Well, I have to go do this, so I can't do that. Um, and whether it's just pure avoidance or me being lazy, uh, yeah, I tend to find myself in that situation. Uh, there are some things that we want to get rid of, and I need to put them up on eBay. And it's like, ugh, I got to pull the lights out, and I got to, set up a spot to photograph them, and it's like, oh, but this bright shiny object over here catches my attention, and so that stuff just never gets done. And I think the business piece is one of those things I think about almost every day, but I think I get so caught up in the end state of, is this something that is could be built? Is this something that's sustainable? Am I going to, am I just afraid in one way or another that I'm not allowing myself the freedom to start?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, the thread in all of those things, so it's more of a general, I know what to do. I know the actions I need to take, but sometimes I get distracted or I can't stay consistent. I find myself easily distracted from doing the things that need to get done. And so I have a history of doing that in different areas. And as a result of that, I'm just afraid that if I go over here to this business thing, that maybe the same thing's going to happen. And right now, I gotta and what you didn't say, but what I'm still picking up from our previous part of this conversation is I currently have a job that I have a routine and a habit of going to consistently, showing
Mhm.
up, and the income is as consistent as I've been consistent in showing up. And I like the predictable flow of that. And maybe what I'm hearing is with this history on some of these other things, when I think about a business side of things, what happens if I leave the day job, I leave that flow of predictable income, and I start getting distracted from all these other things, and I start being inconsistent over here. And even though I got an idea of a business that could generate revenue that would do all of these things, what if my lack of discipline that I've seen in other areas of my life enters into this area, and all of a sudden I put our family into a very rough financial situation, and that's where this fear is coming from. That's what I'm hearing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. You know, I've kind of joked with my wife about one of the most vivid memories I think I have when I was like, and I think I was around 7 years old, is the uh, people that lived in the house next door to us being evicted, and we walked out onto the into the front yard and watched this poor family with a baby, and all of their stuff being taken out of the house. And I had no idea what was going on, but that was like terrifying to me at 7 years old. And I remember asking my parents, what is going on? And they're like, well, they didn't pay their bills, and so they have to leave the house, and they're losing all their things, and they're going to be out on the streets. And not knowing if that was really the case or not, but that was
But at
something that,
at 7 years old, if your mom and dad say this is what's going to happen as a
yeah,
result of what you're
you
seeing,
believe it.
absolutely. At 7 years old, you don't even have any other option other than to just take it in and accept it, and it becomes a part of your reality.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that is just stuck with me. And that's why I think I have a really strong work ethic, and I've worked really hard throughout my life. Is I don't want to be that family, kid. And the rational part of my brain is it's not going to happen. You have money in the bank, and you have skills that worst case scenario, you could transfer to something else if that's what needed to happen. But that little subconscious is
Yeah, so 7-year
always
old
back there.
you created an image of that family with their baby on the streets under a bridge somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
But you said you're getting ready to celebrate a significant birthday.
Yeah,
Yes?
yeah,
So you've been on the planet for a couple more decades now, correct?
yes.
Now, knowing what you know now, do you think for a moment that that family and their child was living on the streets that evening?
Probably not. They were with family or friends or at a shelter or something. Hopefully, hopefully.
Yeah, in fact, in your heart, you know for a fact that there were places that they could turn to.
Yes.
In fact, I'm sure that in your time on this planet, you've seen other families who've had similar struggles financially, and
Hmm.
seemingly things always found a way to work out.
Yep.
In fact, in all of these years, and I happen to know that you're a manager of people in a company, and you've had this experience for years, chances are some of the people you've managed have gone through some pretty difficult crisis moments in their life. Yes?
Yes.
You've had friends throughout your life that have gone through some pretty difficult crisis moments, maybe even worse than being evicted from their house. Yes?
Yes.
All right. Some of those people, when you witnessed them first going through it, and if you had a personal relationship, they were expressing, it's like, I can't believe, I can't understand why this is happening to me. This is the worst thing ever. Blah, 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 blah. But you're also old enough at this point to know that if you get far enough removed and you still know them and you're still in relationship with them 5 years later, 10 years later, 15, 20 years later, you have a conversation with that person and they have said these words to you. Man, that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In fact, in almost every single circumstance, that's what they actually end up saying. In fact, you've had things in your life that haven't gone well, that have fallen apart, that you would have considered tragedy and, oh my gosh, how could this happen to me? But where you sit now, looking back at all of those, wow, that's probably one of the best things could have ever happened to me at that moment in my life.
Yep. I would agree with that.
So, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is to sit down with that 7-year-old self and to have a conversation. Say, listen, I've come here from the future, and I want to let you know that what your mom and dad said was not true. That family with their child did not live on the streets. Yet your mom and dad were right. They didn't pay their bills. They were asked to leave their home. They were in the front lawn. You witnessed it. You asked what's going on. They didn't pay their bills. This is the result. They lost their home. They lost their belongings. Yes, all of that was true. But there's this thing called don't sweat the small stuff. You know, you'll hear this later in your life. This is a conversation you are having with your 7-year-old self. And while it may not seem like it now, when you're my age, you'll understand losing all that stuff isn't the worst thing that could ever happen to you. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, a lot of that stuff was a burden. And the ironic thing is that what they just lost just lifted a massive weight off of their shoulders. In fact, it forced them to approach life from a completely new perspective, from a new environment. And while I did not follow up with that family, I don't know where they are today. I've witnessed countless other experiences of other people's lives, and I have a lifetime of experience to tell you that people in that situation tend to always find a way. And I don't know do you come from a faith perspective, a
I
faith
do.
background?
Yes.
All right. And what's your faith background?
I was raised Episcopal,
Okay.
and we have we have kind of shifted to a little more multi-denominational, non-denominational, I guess.
Okay, so
But
but
yeah,
very much believer in a God that is a
yes,
creator and is working. So in this conversation, it's like, listen, one of the things that I've come to understand that God seems to always find a way to use whatever situation, whatever experience of life we are in, to help us springboard into new opportunities, new options. And it's never too late to start over. And no matter how much you get knocked down, you always have the option to get back up again,
hmm
to rebuild. And you're never going to go back to where you started because you'll never lose what you learned along the way. Do you see how your 7-year-old self, if you went back and had this conversation, how you could be experiencing a completely different perspective on this whole scenario of what you're contemplating as far as making a transition in this next season of life today?
I do. I do. That makes a lot of sense. And
Now
I've
look, go
I've
ahead.
wondered if it was kind of a fear of failure thing, but wow, I mean, I have failed at so many things and gotten back up and pressed on. I don't feel like that is it at all. Um, I'm not afraid to fail at things. I mean, that's when you learn the most. Uh,
Exactly.
so yeah.
One of the things that I've learned through the work that I've done is that in the process of what I was just doing as I was having that conversation, if you were following along, and I just want to confirm that I'm right and make sure that this actually did take place. You recognize that that 7-year-old version of yourself that created a picture of the world that if you don't pay your bills, you're out on the street and it's over. You recognize that that 7-year-old version of yourself is still very much a part of who you are and is in there, is here behind in your being, yes?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So when I suggested this possible conversation, did the words that I suggested maybe you could have this conversation, did every word that I shared that you might potentially say to that 7-year-old version of yourself, did it all resonate with things that you would want to say to that 7-year-old version of yourself?
Yep,
Okay.
it did.
So what I want you to know is that the 7-year-old version of yourself is actually has already received that information. That conversation took place as you imagined it as I spoke it. Do you understand that?
I do. I
So
do.
I wanna ask you for just a moment, does that 7-year-old self have the same fear it did prior to this conversation?
No, and I think I've that 7-year-old has kind of moved on beyond that over time. Uh, but it's still something that when you make those big life decisions, it's kind of that little hand in the back of the room.
Yeah.
Don't forget about this. And
Okay, so
so,
but let's just test it because that's exactly where the 7-year because that's what just happened in this conversation.
yeah,
We were talking about you making a significant transition, and your 7-year-old self right here raised his hand and said this.
yeah,
You recognize
yeah,
that, right?
I do.
He's like and so but let's just talk about this now. As we contemplate the idea of you thinking about some potential future over the next 3 to 5 years, making a transition, doing something on your own, creating an income stream that provides $15,000 a month that allows you eventually to have the freedom to take Mondays and Fridays off, 4-day weekends, fully present with your wife, doing something that is solving problems, adding value, and making a difference in people's lives. Is your 7-year-old self, as we move forward in this conversation, saying, "No, wait, hold on, still this," or is your 7-year-old self saying, "Hmm, okay, I'm willing to watch how this plays out."
Actually, the 7-year-old saying that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, that
Uh,
that's so believe it or not, that 7-year-old self that came up here today has been one of those key situations for you that has given you a little bit of pause about all of this.
mhm.
So, here's something else that you wrote in your questionnaire. I don't feel like I'm doing what God has put me on this earth to do, but I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to do. What would you say if I told you I have the answer to that question?
I would be very curious. Be very curious to what that answer is.
There was a decade of my life that I was an associate pastor. And I was a pastor of small groups. So I was the leader of small groups, but I was also the leader of leaders of small groups in our church. And one of the guys who was leading one of our small groups came to me and says, "Cliff, I need some advice. I'd like for you to pray for me to have discernment on what God's will is for me in a specific situation." And he shares with me this situation. And I said, "I don't need to pray about that. I already know God's will for you." And he's like, "Wow, great. Tell me." So let me explain to you the situation. He said, "Cliff, he worked for Delta. He had a very high position here at Delta Airlines in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky. At the time, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky Airport was the hub for Delta in the United States. They were moving the hub to Atlanta. I believe it was Atlanta. I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure it's Atlanta. But anyway, they were moving the hub. They were going to still have a presence here, but not his position. His position and all the other senior positions and all the other people, they're moving to Atlanta. They said, listen, we would love to have you continue in your role. You've been doing it for the last X number of years and you're excellent. There's nobody else we would want in your position. Here's the situation. We will buy your house right now. We will go and help you find a location and we will buy your house here. We will hire professional packers and movers to take everything you own and move it to Atlanta. And in 3 months from now, you will begin working and be doing your same position that you're excellent at in Atlanta. The only thing is, though, this guy was born in Northern Kentucky. His family's in Northern
Hmm.
Kentucky. His wife is, and all of her family's in Northern Kentucky, and they have young kids. And his only other option was if he says no to this offer, then his only other option is a less significant role, lower pay, or finding some other job somewhere else.
Hmm.
And so he's like, Cliff, I've been praying about this and I just don't know what God wants me to do. And he says, I just want to know if you'd pray for me that God will give me discernment on what it is his will for me is in this situation. I said, well, I don't need to pray about that. I already know it. And it's the same for you as it is for him. I said, I'm pretty sure that God's will is that you would love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, number one. I'm pretty sure that God's will is that you would love others as you love yourself. I'm pretty sure that God's will is that you would be anxious about nothing, but in all things with prayer and petition, go to your Father who is unseen, present your request to him with prayer, petition, and thanksgiving in advance, knowing that you have received whatever it is that you asked for. I'm pretty sure that it's God's will that whatever is noble, whatever is good, whatever is pure, whatever is praiseworthy, that you think on these things. I'm pretty sure that it's God's will that you would not forsake the gathering of yourself with other people who are of the same mind, who will help you stay focused on what you know is to be most important in your life. I'm pretty sure that it's God's will for you that if anybody does anything against you, that you would forgive them, not just once, not just 7 times, but 70 times. I'm pretty sure that God's will for you. Do you see how I could go on and tell you
Yeah,
God's will for you?
I do.
I
I
could sit
do.
here for the next hour telling you what God's will for you is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. And I said these words to my friend. God doesn't care if you move to Atlanta or stay in Cincinnati. He doesn't care.
Hmm.
You get the freedom to create whichever path you want to go, but his will for you will never change. So, the reason why I share this is because so many people get this idea that I'm not doing what I feel God has created me to do, as if there is some ultimate thing, some position, some title, some puzzle piece, some puzzle, and there's a very specific shaped piece that's missing in the puzzle, and I'm that puzzle piece, and I just don't know where I go.
Yeah.
And in a way, I don't think that's how things work. And at another level, I think it is how it works. But ultimately, that puzzle piece is based upon what he knew you would decide anyway.
It's an interesting thought.
And also, I have this firm belief that you may have the ideas and all this other stuff, but God's going to light the path. God's going to lead and guide. And so
Yeah.
ultimately, you're going to end up where you need to be. I have this philosophy and an affirmation that really helps me whenever I'm facing big decisions like this. If I want to go in a complete and I don't know how long have you been following the content that I create?
Probably close to a decade,
So you've
at
seen me make
least
some
5 years.
okay. So you know that I would were you still watching me when I was podcast answer man?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yep.
you know, not only did I leave my career as an insurance agent to go, which is a lifetime of being an employee, to become full-time
Mhm.
self-employed. If you've been listening to me for this long, you've no doubt heard my story at least 15, 20, 30 times.
Yeah.
So you've heard it. All, my first year in business, how much income I didn't make, and all this other stuff. But then you saw me do another pivot. Is like, listen, I'm shutting down this business. I know everybody's told me not to, but I'm going to go do this coaching thing because this is what I most want to do. And
Mhm.
it's not necessarily like, oh, well, I finally just found what God really put me on this earth to do. And it's this because it I I'm still being led and guided. Who knows what I'll be doing 5 years from now? I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I do know is this, and this is the philosophy, this is the affirmation. I'm always at the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right thing. And that there's never a time in my life where that's not true. I am always at the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right thing.
Hmm.
Even though sometimes I go to places that probably aren't the best places to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm with the people that aren't the best people to be around. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm doing things that, quite frankly, maybe aren't the best things for me to be doing. But yet, even in the midst of those, how much I learn through that process, how much I grow through that process
Mhm.
makes me understand that that was perfect for that spot, that time in my life. And oftentimes, in fact, I'm convinced that where I am today at this exact moment and in my life exactly as it is today could not possibly be what it is if you were to go back into my timeline and change any 30-second segment of my life and replace it with something else.
I can see that. Yep.
So I don't know that you adopt this, but it is something that when I adopted this philosophy, I am always at the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right thing. And
Hmm.
I'm not saying that everything that I'm doing is right. I'm saying that I'm at the right place doing the right thing. I'm always doing the best I can with what I currently have to work with.
Hmm.
Is that helpful to you at all?
That
In
is helpful. Yeah.
so when now I'm going to read this statement to you and let me ask you if you feel a little bit differently about this. I feel like I'm not, let's see. I don't feel like I'm doing what God put me on this earth to do, but I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to do. Do you feel differently about that statement now that I've brought all that out?
I think I do. Yeah. I definitely do. And I think all of our lives are a journey and a path, and everything we do prior to this affects the path that we go on. So yeah, that that does make sense the way that you put it.
So in a way, with if you were to have this philosophy, and again, I'm not suggesting that you should. I mean, that's completely up to you whether what you could because you get to adopt whatever it is that you believe and how you
Yep.
live your life and what lens you look at situations through. It's all up to you. But let me just share with you what I see about your life and by the way there's a lot that you've shared in your questionnaire with me that it's probably not even going to come out in this session today. But with my perception of what's going on, I see that you're doing right now exactly what it is that God has put you on this earth to do. You are right now in your current professional life, you are exactly at the right place, working with the right team of people. doing the right work right now. And even that statement states that, and given the place where you're working, the team that you're working with, the environment that you have, and the lack of ability to take weekends off and to make your own schedule and all this other stuff, the lack of what you desire to experience in life is felt there. So
Mhm.
therefore, this situation where you are is perfect to create within you a desire for something that is more in alignment with what you feel more called to create in this world, which you wouldn't have this feeling to go create it if you weren't feeling the limitations on what you could create where you are, which means that you're at the perfect place and you needed this to get to this.
Yeah, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. It really does.
It's kind of like the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. Are you familiar with
Hmm.
it?
Yes.
Do you realize that when he was put into the pit by his brothers and left for dead, kind of, he was at the right place at the right time with the right people, which is by himself, doing the right thing.
Hmm.
And then when he was sold into slavery and he's in a cart chained up, he was at the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right thing. Then, of course, when he was sold and he ends up in Potiphar's house, and he was at the right place, and finally he's like, oh my gosh, things are going so well here. I've become like I'm the second hand man to the leader of the land. Obviously,
Hmm.
finally, God put me, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at that moment he was at the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right thing. And then when Potiphar's wife comes in and tries to seduce him, and he says no, and he ends up leaving the house naked, and then she screams and yells and accuses him of rape, and he's put into prison. Is he at the place where God desired for him to be at that moment in time? Yes, he was at the
Yeah.
exact right place at the
Yeah.
right time with the right people doing the right thing, which is how he
Yeah.
met the baker and interpreted dreams for this person. And all of a sudden that baker had to have that experience to tell the pharaoh who was having dreams of famine.
Hmm.
So what I'm sharing, Mark, is do you understand that no matter where you find yourself, no matter what you do, no matter how many times you fall down, no matter whether you stay in your day job, whether you go out and do this thing, whether you move to Atlanta and move your family away from their family, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's no way on earth you could possibly put yourself in a situation where God says, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
I he's
Yeah.
strayed too far for me to help him here.
He's off the map. Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't that give you great faith and confidence that no matter what you choose,
It
it will be
does.
that no matter what you choose, it will be the right thing for you?
It does. I mean, that's really a powerful statement. Um, and it does. You know, and I have put my trust in God. I have asked him for, help on decisions, and but I have ultimately said, I put my trust in you. And I know that whatever decision is made, it's a decision that you would want for me. Um, and so, yeah, that's a really powerful statement.
So how do you feel about moving forward? What do you want?
That's a really good question. Again, I think I kind of summed up what's really important, and especially at this age in my life, uh, having remarried, and not wanting to go down the path that uh, happened in my original married relationship. uh, and I'm looking at what's important and what's not important and can be moved out of the way, and kind of paring down what what I really want out of the rest of my life. And I don't really feel like I have had like a, midlife crisis or anything, but it has caused me to reflect a little bit on on the amazing blessings that I've had throughout my life. I've had some amazing experiences, some opportunities to um, raise my own son and my stepdaughter, and those are just huge blessings to me. And so, but I also had the kind of that feeling of, is all that I've done through my life just been work? And sometimes it's hard to see all those great experiences that have happened, because I just feel like I am chained down to a rock sometime that is work that I'm just always carrying with me. And it's like, I don't want to feel that way. And I want to, like I said, what I want. I want sometimes that freedom to not be chained down to a keyboard and a screen, um, so I can take advantage of those opportunities that come up, take advantage to spend time with my wife and with my family.
Yeah. How many hours a week are you working right now?
Probably 50s.
Okay. So quite a bit more than 40 hours a week.
Yep.
Certainly not a schedule that allows for an occasional 4-day weekend here and there more than once a year,
Yeah, maybe twice, but
maybe twice,
something that has to be carefully planned and scheduled to happen,
and approved by somebody.
and
And
approved by
yeah,
someone. And yeah, yeah.
okay. Give me just a second to see where to go next, because there's an infinite number of directions we could go from here, but we've already covered a lot. Have you considered, by the way, I just want to confirm, full-time self-employment, aspiring entrepreneur, that's what you have written in your questionnaire to me. So that is a direction that you desire. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So when it comes to opportunities that would exist for you to be full-time self-employed as an aspiring entrepreneur now, to become an entrepreneur, have you contemplated any particular business models?
I have looked at a few different things. At one point, I was laid off, and unemployed for a while. And I worked with a friend and started a
A drone business?
drone business. Yes,
Okay.
flying drones for construction and agriculture and things. Um,
Pause right there for just a moment. Tell me a little
yeah.
bit about that. Did you guys generate revenue? Did it put food on the table?
Well, he works in that industry.
Okay.
He works for a organization that's in that industry, and he gave me some equipment and some ideas and some feedback on things that I could try. Um, and it put a little on the table, but it ultimately, I just couldn't generate enough revenue, to make it sustainable.
Okay. So, by the way, I'm into transformative language. Is it that you couldn't do enough to generate a significant amount of revenue, or that you just hadn't figured it out at that point, and I wasn't fully invested in that model that made me go all in and figure it out? Which of those two is true? That it couldn't do it, or you just weren't fully invested and you didn't?
I guess I would pick number two. I
Okay.
didn't really know how to generate that revenue, and I wasn't able to find many people who could help me figure that out. And so ultimately, it became, I don't think this is going to work. And then at that point, the involvement in it dropped,
Yep.
and off we went. So,
Awesome. Tell me what was awesome about that experience. Why are you thankful that you had that experience? What did you learn through it?
um, I think one thing that was the first time I had ever been laid off from a job, or
Okay.
I've, never been fired or anything like that. And so, it showed me that I could get through any kind of adversity like that successfully. Gave me the confidence that if that happened in the future, that I could deal with it. What I really enjoyed about it was um, that I could set the direction of it. I could decide this is the path I want to take and what I want to do, and these are the at that time there were people that were doing uh, drone stuff for real estate,
Mhm.
and it was, I looked at the margins and the potential income across that, and looked at the existing environment of these people who got a drone for Christmas, and then they decided, well, I can make money with this, so I'll spend 4 hours at your house doing drone footage for $50. And it's like, there's, the market was so low at what people were wanting to do, that to make a professional, a realistic amount of money off of that, uh, people weren't willing to pay it because,
So let me pause you there for just a moment.
okay.
So by the way, I want you to know that with a little bit of a different mindset, with potentially a couple of different strategies that I could tell you about now, if I were to go back and talk to Marc Rains back in that scenario, that situation, your friend just gave you this equipment, he gave you some ideas of how to do this, and you're out there and you're putting some food on the table. If you would have had a high quality coach, or if you would have known about upgrading your peer group, meaning find other people who are operating in life at the level you want to operate, who are thinking creatively, upgrade your peer group to people who are running businesses, who are always innovating, pivoting, finding ways to find more profitable ways to do what you're doing in your business. If you would have surrounded yourself with some business people and met with them on a weekly basis, if you would have found role models who are out there doing drone companies for companies for in corporate or construction, or on commercial side of things, who literally are making millions of dollars a year, or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in their commercial drone companies, and you would have just used them as role models and learned what they're doing and go evaluate and study, you could have came away from that scenario with a whole different perspective than what you just told me. Now, what
Yep.
you just told me is true for you because it's where your focus was and where your focus is. This is what you create as your reality. This is the narrative, the story that you were telling myself or yourself, is that, hey, these kids got a $50 drone for Christmas and now competition is everywhere. But the same thing could be argued. There's a different narrative that could be told there. And so, for example, well, gosh, you know what? The one thing I can tell you right now, none of these kids with their $50 drones that they got for Christmas, none of them are going and investing in getting fully licensed with the FFA for commercial flight of drones.
Hmm.
None of them have the professional $10,000 drones, and who are working and who have liability insurance, and who have professional contracts, who are going out and doing things for corporate world or the commercial space or commercial um, construction. None of them have acquired and invested themselves fully in mastering the skill of commercial drone stuff. And in 90 days, I've invested countless hours into making all of these things possible. And you know what? Put a hefty investment in it. But now, every time I do a job, I go on a commercial site. I'm out there for about 6 to 8 hours. But that 6 to 8 hours has roughly translated into about ten to $15,000 in profit.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm doing every single day of every week. And I'm walking away when it's all said and done, you take all of my expenses and all of the stuff that I've had to do, I walk away with about 20 to $25,000 a month with my commercial drone business.
Mhm.
By the way, just as I tell you all of that, do you see that that could have been a possibility for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. However, you still were at the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right thing, and you decided to no longer pursue that. So,
Yeah.
what happened after that? Oh, by the way, the couple other things that I noticed out of here, something else that you learned through this position that I didn't hear you say is, wow, it was amazing how God brought somebody into my life who had some area of expertise. He freely gave to me, showed me how to do this, gave me an idea. It's amazing how God used that person to show me one possible path. So do you see how all of this
I
stuff
do.
is working? So what
Yeah.
happened after that?
What happened after that is I got another job offer and took that job offer and put the drone stuff on the shelf and, focused all my efforts into that job and kind of dreamed about what may have could have been.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, but God put me in the right place with the right people, and I was doing the right things at the right time. So
Exactly. I
yeah.
love that. So you have considered it, and my original question is, when you think about being full-time self-employed as an entrepreneur, what business models have you considered? So
Hmm.
drone drone business is one that you've considered, you've dabbled with, you have a little bit of experience.
Yeah.
Are there any other businesses that you've thought of pursuing?
Photography. I have grown up with a camera in my hand. My dad was a professional photographer. So I grew up learning everything about photography. Uh, and I've done that on and off for, I don't know, the past 20 plus years. Uh, Still do the occasional, senior photo shoots and things like that. And yeah, I've always thought of that as could I generate enough revenue? And there are certainly lots of people that do. Um, it's also a pretty cutthroat industry as well. Some similar challenges, um, but yeah, it's one of those things that I love photography,
Well,
but
let me
I'm
let me tell
also
you
kind
this.
of
Let me tell you this.
yeah.
I'm in the industry that I'm in is life coaching. Tell me, what are your thoughts on life coaching?
Well, I mean it runs the gamut. Uh, somebody sitting next to you on a subway could be a life coach, and if you're sitting in a seat next to you in an airplane could be a life coach, offering you feedback on you or on their life, up to the people that charge, I don't know, millions of dollars for a day with that individual.
Yeah,
So
and let me ask you this. What separates the two?
uh, I would say one is your own perceived value,
Mhm.
and the other piece is how you market yourself, and at the the level at which you market your service.
Okay, I would say there's one more. By the way, there may be many more, but you certainly struck up two. And in my mind, there are three main categories. So I know a lot of coaches. I know coaches who hardly ever charge money for their coaching because they don't feel like it's worth it in their mind. So they
Hmm.
just coach for free. I know people who coach for $50 or $100 a session. And I know people who coach where for you to have a single day with you with them, it will cost you $250,000 for one day of
Hmm.
one-on-one coaching with them.
Yep.
So the difference between the $50 an hour or $50 per session and the $250,000 for one day of coaching with me, what is the difference between the two? I agree that the coach's own perceived value of what they do, how effectively they market themselves, but there is a third one, in its skill level. Would you agree with that?
I would,
Skill
very
level.
much, very much.
Yeah. So here's what I will say. Drone photography. Certainly, there anybody could go out and get a drone and start a drone business today. And you're right. They could go somewhere and get jobs and charge $50 for the entire day. And there's a lot of realist. By the way, some of them will do so many of those. And quite frankly, they're not in a position where they need to provide for a family and they're not the sole income earner or anything like that. So they could do this all day, every day. And you're right. There'll be real estate agents who are going to hire those kids all the time to do that because you know what, the drone footage is good enough. In fact,
Good.
it's kind of great,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
But how you could make a living from a drone business is your own perceived value in what you do, how you're marketing yourself and who you're marketing to. I'm going to add that.
Hmm.
Actually, I'm going to add that as a fourth one, if you don't mind. I'm going to who, not H, who you market to. Big component there. So, depending on who you market to, how you market yourself, what you have as your own perceived value that you bring to the table, and your level of skill that you bring to this, you can set yourself apart from all the other drone businesses out there. Yes?
Hmm. Yep.
Okay. Photography. So one of the things, and by the way, I want you to be aware of this thing, the narrative that you tell yourself. Does that phrase make sense to you? Does
Oh
it
yeah.
resonate?
Yeah, it does.
So you shared with me the narrative that you told yourself about the drone business. Christmas, all these kids have this thing, 8 hours, $50, blah, the market's getting flooded. So think about this. Next, I've always thought about photography. My father, professional photographer. I've done occasional jobs here and there, but today it's a cutthroat business. The narrative,
Hmm.
it just anybody out there today, and most can't. Gosh, weddings are shot on iPhones these days, and blah blah blah, and all that. But here's the thing: what separates a photographer who is driven to the lowest cost possible so they can get the next wedding gig, and somebody who literally makes $100,000 to $300,000 a year working just a couple of days a week shooting some events.
Yep.
What's the difference? Their own perceived value, how they're marketing themselves, who they're marketing to, and skill level.
Skill. Yep.
So what I'm going to tell you is that whatever industry you consider going after, you're always going to have the option to have the same narrative repeat over and over again. So for me, I can tell you right now, I coach a lot of coaches, for example, people who want
Hmm.
to be professional coaches. Many of them, their skill level is super high. In fact, they've been coaching people for the last 30 years in their corporate job. Their ability to create transformation in the lives of others is through the roof. Their own perceived value in the mud. They don't have any perceived value. How they're marketing themselves, they don't want to market themselves. They're afraid to talk about themselves. And who they're marketing to, they don't market to anyone. They're matter of fact, they're like, why would I market to anyone? As soon as somebody finds out that I'm a coach, they're like, oh, you're one of those. And I'm like, so what sets somebody apart as a coach who just barely scrapes by, charging $50, and it's your own perceived value, how you market yourself, who you're marketing to, and your skill level. So these are going to be the 4 items you'll want to focus on, and you're going to need to tell yourself a story that is far more empowering. I don't care. By the way, I don't care what industry you choose. Mm-hmm. You're going to need to say, number 1, I am going to go all in on this industry, whatever industry it is. I'm going to go all in on this industry. I'm going to go and create a business that does this. But here's the thing. Number 1, I will understand the immense value that my work brings to this target audience. In fact, I'm going to choose a target audience who I don't need to convince of the value. They'll already know it. They're in desperate need of the value. But the thing is, though, they're in desperate need of somebody with incredible skill levels at this. Yeah. And so therefore, I am committed to going in and studying and mastering the skill of this industry like nobody's business. And once I have begun to really investigate and dig in and do my homework and all this stuff, I'm going to start landing gigs. And by golly, I am going to know exactly how to market myself. I'll easily make $15,000, $20,000 a month every single month. I will make it to where I never have to work on Mondays or Fridays in my life ever again if I don't want to. I can choose to if I want, but I'll never have to generate that $15,000 to $20,000 a month. I can take weekends off and be fully present with my wife anytime I want. And not only that, my clients are served well and they recognize the value. And what I do either changes the lives of my clients, or what my clients are enabled to do because of the work that I do has a positive impact on the world. You have to have that kind of narrative for whatever it is that you pursue.
Yeah. And I think you hit the correct nail on the head there, Cliff, with the perceived value. And I think that is something, even with the skill and even knowing how potentially to market something and potentially who to market to, I think it's getting over the perceived value piece in my head that I've struggled with. I am I'll say good enough, not in relation to skill, but I am worthy of that I am worthy of charging X amount of money for this particular service. And I think that's one that I totally struggle with, as I'm sure a lot of people do.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. I talk to people all day, every day. So let me ask you this. What makes somebody worthy of charging the amount of money that allows them to provide financially the kind of life they want to live, or lifestyle they want?
Because they believe that they provide the value for it.
Okay. And what would cause someone to believe in the value that they offer?
I think, one, that they have to believe in themselves first, and then 2, they have to have that evidence of the value that they have provided to others.
Okay, great. So what's currently missing for you is your own perceived value. and you just
Yep.
gave yourself the roadmap on how to get your own perceived value. Yes.
Yep.
So, number
Yep.
one, you'll need to find an industry to get involved in and then create some evidence for the value you bring. Yes.
Hmm.
Would that help you with your perceived value?
I think it would.
Okay. And then you would need to believe in yourself first. All right. So, you would need to believe in yourself. Do you think it's possible to come and believe in yourself?
Oh yeah.
All right. What would that take?
Commitment. Being, I think probably the biggest one for me is grace and giving myself permission to potentially struggle with things at the beginning, but knowing that I'm working in the right direction, and not immediately go tough love on myself.
So, avoid negative self talk.
Yep. Focus on the end goal.
Focus on outcome,
Hmm.
on end goal. Anything else?
Commit consistent effort.
Consistent effort. Kind of like going to CrossFit in the morning 4 days a week, every week for 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
Yep.
though you're not a morning guy.
Yep.
So someone says,
Yeah. So
as if,
someone says.
as if anyone on this planet was ever born as either a morning or not morning person.
True. True.
Excellent. So let me ask you this: do you have the ability to make a commitment to something?
Of course.
Do you have the ability to receive and give yourself grace?
I'm working on that every day.
Okay. And are you better at it now than you were 5 to 10 years ago?
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
you're consistently moving in a more powerful and empowering direction on the ability to give yourself grace?
Hmm.
Are you
I am.
consistent and committed to doing that further?
I could be more consistent with that, but I am committed to doing it further.
Okay. Let's see here. Are you willing to give yourself permission to struggle in the beginning with new things, but knowing that you're getting better all the time? Are you willing to give yourself that permission?
Absolutely.
All right. Are you willing to avoid negative self-talk and come up with and learn and implement strategies on what to do when you recognize it's coming up?
Yes. Working on that one too.
All right. Are you willing to figure out what your end goal is and stay focused on it?
Yes, definitely.
All right. And wow, I have no idea what that word is. I have consistent. I have no
When
idea
you,
what. Do you remember what the other word was? I'd have to go back in the transcript for this.
I
I
would
wrote literally consistent. Are you
consistency.
willing to have
Uh,
consistent in your life?
Yes, I will add consistent into my life.
Woo!
It's an
All,
important part of a balanced breakfast.
yes, I'm gonna title this episode "How to Get More Consistent in Your Life."
I like it. I like it.
Anyway, let me ask you this. So you said earlier, in a lot of way, no, I don't feel like I'm doing what God has put me on this earth to do, but actually you do, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you've given me some clarity on that.
All right.
Yes.
Then you said, but I don't know what it is I'm supposed to do, but you do know what you're supposed to do.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
You know that the options of what you could choose to do, by the way, you know that you want to be full time self employed. You know that you want $15,000 a month minimum. You know that you want the freedom to take Fridays and Mondays off as often as you desire so that you can spend more quality time being fully present with your wife. And you know that you want to make sure that you're making a difference, adding value to people's lives, right?
Hmm.
Solving problems, making people's lives better. So you know what you want. And now through this conversation, you know that there seemingly are an infinite number of potential industries that you could choose. Yes.
Yes.
And Given any choice that you make as far as an industry, you have two options. You can tell yourself a story about how difficult it is and all the reasons why it won't work and all of the challenges that you would face. Or you could tell yourself a story about how you are going to uniquely find a way to make this profitable thing work. And you've got the power of God on your back.
Yep.
Which of those two narratives will you choose with whatever you choose to move forward?
I like the second one because I've done too much of the first in my life.
All right. And you recognize that whatever industry you choose, you're going to, and I'm starting, okay, you're going to work on your own perceived value, which we've just talked about the commitments that you're made. So you understand that your perceived value is not going to be an issue to hold you back in the future. Yes.
Yes.
All right. And you are eventually going to learn how to market yourself, your whatever industry you choose. That will come along. It's okay to struggle with that at the beginning and not be great at it, knowing that you'll get better as you go along and how to market yourself. Yes.
Yes.
You'll give yourself grace and along the way, and you're going to avoid the negative self-talk when things don't is like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. I really should have not written down contenton. Uh, whatever the heck that is. Anyway, you're committed to figuring out excuse me, you're committed to figuring out how you're going to best enable yourself to master whatever skill it is. You're not going to just enter into this and say, I'm the new guy. You're going to be one of those guys that says, listen, I may be the new guy, but you know what? I've studied more in the last 24 months than most people have in the last 3 decades. That's how devoted I am. I am all in. My skill level is off the charts. I'm putting in the reps. I am delivering. I am showing up. All right? And then who you will market to. I will choose the right clients that will enable me to do the work at the right level that they automatically, because of the level that they're doing life in and the things that are on the hook for whatever service I offer, there's already a perceived value. I mean, in fact, choosing the right client and just doing one job will give me all the evidence I need to actually solve my perceived value because they're going to
Mm-hmm.
write me a big old check. And that
Yep.
being dropped in my bank account is going to be all the evidence I need of the value that I bring to the table.
Yeah. Yep.
So do you feel like you are more prepared now to go out and move forward with whatever you choose than you were prior to this conversation?
I do. This has been super helpful in reframing my mindset.
Excellent. Do you have any idea right now which direction you might go?
I do
Like as far
not.
as a business?
I do not. I need to take some time to myself and consider some things.
Well, let me read to you a couple of things.
All right.
Excuse me. The first one are a list of skills that somebody I know has, because I asked you to list your skills. Listening and observing. Those are very powerful skills. Strategic thinking. I know a lot of people who could benefit from somebody who can look at a situation from outside of the box and help people see things from a perspective that they're not seeing and come up with a strategic way of looking at the situation. Problem solving. Well, you know what? There's a lot of problems out there. And the fact that you
Yep.
have a gift of being able to come up with solutions is a big deal. You said process development. A lot of businesses fail, a lot of people's lives fail, a lot of families fail, a lot of situations fail because they just don't understand how to put a process into place. Managing people, managing people is a huge thing. That means that you have the ability to communicate, you have an ability to get to know somebody and build rapport with them. You have the ability to influence. the actions of others, all of these are incredibly powerful gifts that you have. Conflict resolution. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a little bit of conflict in our world today.
What?
Quickly learn, you have an ability to quickly learn new things. You say that you love to read, you love to study, you love to learn, you love to grow. So that means that when faced with something that you don't know how to do, if you're working with a client, if it's a problem that they have and it's a problem you desire to solve, it's a problem they're willing to pay to have solved, you're the type of person who may not have the answer, but you're willing to go and figure out the solution. You're willing to learn it.
Yep.
You're a licensed pilot, which tells me that you have a level of dedication to learning complex things. They don't just let anybody have a license to get up in the air. And as much as I have an admiration for pilots and stuff of that nature, I wonder if I could actually even figure out all of the stuff to pass the test, and even to discern how on earth do they choose what to say and what they're saying on the radio to talk to air traffic control and all this other stuff. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I just have never had a passion enough to do it.
Yeah.
So what that tells me is that even though you have this story and narrative about the fact that sometimes you've got things that I would want to do, like, putting this stuff on eBay or tracking my calories for a month and all this other stuff, when it comes down to something you are really passionate about, you really go all in on it,
I do.
right? And
Yep.
so all I can tell you is that you're just not really all in and passionate about putting things on eBay. And quite frankly, you're not all in it, and you're not all that passionate about tracking your metrics, carbs and nutrients and all that. You're really not all in on it for
Yeah.
30 days straight.
Yeah.
And that's up for you to decide whether or not how you feel about that. But it really, this whole bright shiny object syndrome and all this other procrastination stuff, it's just that you're just not all in on it.
Yeah.
But when you are all in, the fact that you are a licensed pilot tells me that you have the ability to go all in on something and overcome all the distractions. Yes?
Hmm. I do.
Okay. You're an accomplished photographer. I love that you said I can fix just about anything. I love working with my hands. I love working on the house. I love working on the car, and I love to create things. This, as an entrepreneur, is these skills, these talents, these abilities can enable you to do an incredibly wide number of potential businesses. And what I would encourage you to do is just start dreaming. I would encourage you to make a list of 10 different businesses that you could launch within the next 3 to 6 months, and just start there. Just dream. You're not committed to any of them. They're just options. But
Yep.
create a list, at least 10 different businesses that you could generate. Do not allow yourself to be like, but there's no way I could make money at that. Cut that narrative off as soon as it comes up.
Okay.
If you want to go
All right.
start a dude ranch in Oklahoma, then write it down.
Okay.
And then what else was I going to say? There was one other thing. I think there was one other thing. Is before I got into the skills. Where was I? Skills, abilities, what you have. Yeah, I think that's it. There was something else I was going to say, but I went so deep down that rabbit trail, it has now eluded me.
It happens.
Mark, let me ask you this: what have been there? By the way, you'll be able to go back and watch the replay of this as often as you desire. Chances are, in my mind, there's at least 10 different significant insights that you would be able to come up with and write down if you were to review this and take notes. None of that matters at this very moment. I just want to know off the top of your head, what are the top 1, 2, or 3 insights that you feel are most valuable that you've gotten out of today?
I think number one is that I don't need to worry myself. Am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? Am I going in the right direction? I think that's one that has bothered me for a while, uh, and it's great to let go of that and say I'm doing the right thing in the right place with the right people at the right time. That is very freeing to me to be able to do that. I think the number two is the self worth, um, that I am worthy of doing what I put my efforts into, and that other people will see and believe that as well, potentially. And I think that's something that I have really struggled with a lot in my life, is believing that I'm good enough for, those kind of things, and the negative self-talk that comes with that. And yeah, and then number three, that I do have the skills and the tools to go in any direction that I want, and it's consistent effort that'll get me there.
Awesome. I love it. And the great news, you could find two clients who are willing to pay you $7,500 a month to do whatever it is you choose to do.
Yep.
Or you could
Mhm.
find eight clients to pay you $2,000 a month.
Mhm.
You could find 15 clients to pay you $1,000 a month. I mean, this really isn't rocket science. There's
Yeah.
so much potential for you. I'm so
Yeah.
super excited. Let me ask you this. Based upon this conversation, what's one, two, or three actions you know you are going to take over the next 2 weeks?
One, I'm going to review this once or twice and go back over some of the things that you said. And the big one is sit down and put that list of directions that I could take together, and then finally pick one of them and take action on it.
Nice. Excellent. Well, let me ask you this. Would you be interested in a second complimentary one-on-one 90-minute coaching session with me, private this time, not broadcasted live, and we can come back in about 2 weeks from now and evaluate the results of these actions and go from there?
Scary, but yes.
Sweet. Let me take a look here and see what I have available. So I go in here and do 1, 2. Actually, it'll have to be 3 weeks. How about Friday, October 6th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time? Would that work for you?
Let me take a look. That would.
Okay, so that's Friday, October 6th at 1 p.m. That's Eastern Time. What time zone are you
Yep.
in?
Central. So it'll be
Central.
noon for me.
Noon Central.
Yep.
Mark, I look forward to chatting with you in 2.5. Actually, it'll be 3 weeks, I guess.
Yep.
So 3 weeks. I can't wait to connect with you then. Was this valuable?
Clip, it was incredibly valuable, and I really appreciate you making these sessions available.
My pleasure. Let me ask you this. What would you say to somebody who is watching live or watching the replay or who might be listening to the audio recording of this conversation in a podcast episode and they've been thinking about reaching out to me for one of these coaching sessions but hasn't pulled the trigger yet? What would you tell them?
that that it took me about a month from it is so I'll go down the whole path. That one, I thought about the the day with Cliff, or your private coaching for a day piece, and I thought, okay, can I put that money together where I would feel good about spending that amount of money to spend a day with Cliff, because I do believe that you could make a positive impact in my life. And you made this offer available, but it still took me almost a month to actually click on the button and sign up to do it. And so my thought would be, what I would say to somebody is, don't wait a month, just do it. Just it doesn't hurt to send that email and say, Cliff, I want to do this.
Sweet. Are you thankful for the individuals who have done these live streaming sessions before you, the ones you've heard in the podcast episodes? Did you get value, even though it was somebody else's life, somebody else's issues? Did you find yourself connecting at a deep level with their stories? And was it valuable for you that they shared that publicly?
Absolutely. It takes courage to share your challenges and weaknesses with the entire world, but that's how you move forward.
I love it. I love it. Well, Marc, thank you so much. Stick around. I'll be back with you in just a moment, just after I end the live stream here. Okay.
Thanks, Cliff.
All right. Thank you. All right. So I am going to remove Marc here. I just want to say thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream coaching session. If you would like one of these one-on-one live stream coaching sessions with me, broadcasted on the internet, recorded for potential use in a podcast episode, all you have to do is email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Again, that's cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Put live stream coaching in the email subject line, and we will get something scheduled. And with that, until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level. Bye-bye.